Section 7 of A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by S.S. Kim, Seoul, South Korea. A History of the Inquisition of Spain, Volume 4, by Henry Charles LEA. Book 8, Chapter 5, Spheres of Action, Mysticism Part 7. These saintly mystics, with their direct communication from God, wielded an influence which we can scarce realize. They had become so numerous and their revelations were so unhesitatingly accepted that Spain was enveloped in an atmosphere of mysticism, in which the divine guidance was sought rather than the counsels of human wisdom. Olivares might well fear any adverse utterances of Madre Luisa, for his downfall in 1643 was accelerated by visions enjoyed by Don Francisco de Chiribaga, although the Jesuit Padre Galindo, who was concerned in making them known, was imprisoned by his superiors for acting without their permission. When the affairs of the Spanish monarchy were at their lowest ebb at this time, it is a curious revelation of the impulses under which it was governed to find Philip IV, complaining of the perplexities to which he was exposed by the visions brought to him by the frailes. This matter of revelations, he says, is one which requires much consideration, especially when he is told that God orders him to punish those who had rendered him good service, and to elevate those whose methods had not earned them a good reputation. All that is lacking to complete this picture of unreasoning superstition is found in the fact that this utterance is made to another mystic, to whom he appeals for guidance and for intercession with God to send him light. Maria de Jesus, commonly known as Sor Maria de Agrada, to whom Philip thus turned for counsel, was too strongly entrenched in the royal favor to be in danger from the Inquisition yet. Notwithstanding that favor, her revelations were rejected by Rome, thus furnishing another example of the difficulty of differentiating between sanctity and heresy. She had practiced mental prayer from the time when she was able to use her reason, and she was in constant communication with God, the Virgin, and the angels. Her fame filled the land, and her voluminous writings, which claim to be inspired, still form part of the devotional literature of the faithful. She so captured the confidence of Philip that he made her chief adviser for 22 years until her death in 1665, 4 months before his own. He maintained constant correspondence with her by every post. Her influence thus was almost unbounded, but she seems never to have abused it. Her advice was usually sound, and she never sought the enrichment of the impoverished convent of Agreda, of which she was the superior. With all the power of the Franciscan order and of the Spanish court to sustain her claims to sanctity, the canonization of such personage would seem almost a matter of course, and it would doubtless have been effected if she had not reduced her revelations to writing. However they might suit the appetites of Spanish piety, nourished so long on mystic extravagance, they did not appeal to the sober judgment of the rest of the Catholic world. In spite of their divine inspiration, her Letania y Nombres Misteriosos de la Reina del Cielo and her Mystica Ciudad de Dios was condemned in Rome, and a decree as to the latter was posted on the doors of St. Peter's, August 4, 1681. The Mystica Ciudad was eminently popular in Spain, and at the instant of the Spanish court, its prohibition was suspended. The Inquisition took advantage of this in 1686 to issue a decree permitting its circulation, at which the congregation of the Index was naturally offended, and in 1692 the papal decree of condemnation appeared in the appendix to the Index of Innocent XI, in spite of which the book was formally permitted by Spanish Inquisition. When in 1695 a translation by Père Thomas Grosset appeared in France, the Sorbonne, by decree of September 27, 1696, condemned it as containing propositions contrary to the rules of ecclesiastical modesty, and many fables and dreams from the Apocrypha exposing Catholicism to the contempt of the heretics. The Spanish court labored earnestly to obtain a renewal of the suspension and finally succeeded, so that the book was omitted from the 1716 Index of Clement XI. Then in 1729, the subject was again taken up, when after long debate, the book was permitted, though Dr. Eusebius Armout tells us that in Rome in 1735, he was shown a decree of Benedict XIII renewing the prohibition and asserting that its withdrawal had been obtained fraudulently. Still, the book has never since reappeared in the index. There was a similar struggle over the Litania, which was still included in the 1716 Index of Clement XI and the first Index of Benedict XIV in 1744, but has disappeared from all succeeding issues. Less successful thus far has been the persistent effort to procure the canonization of Madre Maria, leading to a papal decree of April 27, 1773, forbidding all future proceedings in the case. Notwithstanding this, Leo XIII, on March 10, 1884, ordered the Congregation of Rites to consider in secret whether this prohibition could be removed. To suggest such a discussion is almost equivalent to prejudging it affirmatively, but before the decision was reached, chance led to the publication in the Deutsche Merkur of December 29, 1889, of the whole secret history of the case, which has probably put an end, at least for the present, to the prospect of enrolling in the calendar of saints one whose revelations have been so repeatedly condemned as illusory or emanating from Satan. While, as we shall see, the pest of beatas revelandas and more or less conscious impostors continue to afflict the land, the cases recognized as alumbrados are comparatively few during the remainder of the 17th century. In a Toledo record, commencing in 1648, the first one occurs in 1679, when the Franciscan Fray Francisco de Toledo was convicted. In this, the offense is treated as formal heresy, requiring reconciliation, and the punishment was extremely severe. He was to receive a circular discipline in his convent. He was to be confined in a cell for 2 years, and for 2 years more was to be recluded, during which time he was to be occupied in the works of humility. In addition, he was perpetually suspended from orders, deprived of the active and passive voice, and reduced to lay communion. It is possibly to this, or to some movement in which Fray Francisco bore a part, that Miguel Molinos refers in a letter of February 16, 1680, to the Jesuit General Oliva, saying that when in 1679 Satan sought to revive the sect of Illuminists in Spain, and they had applied to him, he had given an opinion so contrary to their follies that it frightened them and stopped the attempt. End of section 7.